So good afternoon and welcome to this info event of the Swiss Competence Hub for multi-party data integration in the built environment. We are very pleased that so many of you have found your way to this event, and it shows us that this topic is of interest in our industry. I would like to start by saying a few words in English before we then switch to German. For all English speakers or people who are not based in Switzerland, we would like to say that although this hub has a Swiss in its name, we are of course open to welcome participants from worldwide. We will therefore also make a certain mix during this event. That means certain parts will be presented in German and others in English. At the end, we will also do a relatively long session of Q&A where you will have the possibility to ask questions or clarify things that didn't become clear. And with this, I would also like to welcome our German-speaking participants. Wie gesagt, es freut uns außerordentlich, dass viele oder so viele von Ihnen an einem solchen Competence Hub und den angedachten Thematiken interessiert sind. Und dies ist eigentlich genau das Ziel dieser Infoveranstaltung, Ihnen die Idee dieses Hubs, dessen Methodiken und Nutzen für Sie zu präsentieren. Gut, wie gestaltet sich dieser Info-Event? Zu Beginn freut es mich, dass Alar Joost, Vice Chair Building Smart Switzerland, einige Worte zum Impact des angedachten Beitrages des Hubs für die Industrie, für Sie als Industrieteilnehmer sagen wird. Danach wird Professor Hall, Leiter des Chair für innovatives und industrialisiertes Bauen, im Detail erläutern, was die einzelnen Themenbereiche sind, was sind die Thematiken, wie sind diese organisiert und wie Sie mit Ihren Problemstellungen und Ihren Challenges als Teilnehmer dieses Hubs profitieren können. Und wie bereits gesagt auf Englisch, zum Schluss haben wir eine relativ lange Session Q&A geplant, wo Sie die Möglichkeit haben, Fragen zu stellen oder jegliche Unklarheiten zu diskutieren. Vielleicht kurz zu meiner Person. Mein Name ist David Bucher, habe an der ETH Zürich Bauingenieurwissenschaften studiert und nach einem kurzen Abstecher in die Industrie bin ich nun seit circa 1,5 Jahren als wissenschaftlicher Mitarbeiter am Lehrstuhl von Professor Hall tätig und übernehme im Hub als Scientific Lead die ganze Organisation, Kommunikation und Betreuung der Teilnehmer. Gut, was ist dieser Hintergrund dieses Competence Hub? Nur kurz, was wir beobachten ist, dass nicht erst seit der aktuellen Covid-Krise ist unsere Branche mit vielfältigen Herausforderungen in der Gegenwart wie auch in der Zukunft konfrontiert. Und diese neu geschaffene Open Innovation Plattform wir möchten hier einen Beitrag leisten. Durch die Verbindung von Industrie, akademischen und zukunftsweisenden Organisationen suchen wir schlussendlich nach innovativen, aber auch maßgeschneiderten Lösungen. Letztendlich ist das Ziel, ein führender Competence Hub für Datenintegration in der Bauindustrie wie auch Bauwirtschaft zu werden, wo Spitzenforschung gemeinsam entwickelt und auch gemeinsam in die Praxis für die Schweiz umgesetzt werden kann. Gut, mit dieser kurzen Einführung übergebe ich gerne das Wort an Alar Joost zu seiner Sicht von Building Smart Switzerland auf diesen Hub.
Ganz herzlichen Dank, David, und freue mich besonders heute zusammen diese Idee, die Professor Daniel Hall, David und ich jetzt seit, ich glaube, gut einem Jahr mit uns getragen haben und eine Reihe von Überlegungen reingelaufen sind oder wie wir uns der Thematik nähern könnten, euch heute vorstellen zu dürfen. Ich gehe gerne auf die nächste Seite. Wovon reden wir eigentlich und was treibt uns an, oder? Ich glaube, und Wir freuen uns ja auch sehr, dass wir mit Building Smart, Bauen Digital Schweiz jetzt schon eine ganze Weile hier, ein paar Jahre jetzt im Markt in der Schweiz tätig sein dürfen, dort ein sehr, ich sage mal, nahes Bild von dem haben, wie sich der Markt, die Industrie, die Technologien entwickelt haben und sind jetzt zu einem Punkt gekommen, wo wir glauben, dass wir im Verständnis von, was sind jetzt die zukünftigen Herausforderungen, wie so ein ganz bestimmtes Momentum erreicht haben. Ich glaube, die Themenstellungen, wie sie heißen, oder mit BIM, mit Common Data Environments, mit Digitalisierung, Digitaltransformation, Digital Twin, wie sie alle heißen, oder? Sind von links nach rechts irgendwo diskutiert worden und alle haben ein gewisses Bild für sich, wie sie in ihren Positionen, ob es jetzt aus der Planungssicht, aus der Realisierungssicht oder der Betriebssicht sind, oder was so ihre, ich sage jetzt mal, situativen Herausforderungen sind. Also das heißt, wenn man das so ein bisschen auch zu einem Reifegrad, und ich zeige das gleich nochmal auf Basis eines Stufenplans, oder wenn man das so ein bisschen auf dem Reifegrad anschaut, haben wir so in diesen einzelnen Positionen eine ganz gute Handlungsfähigkeit und auch ein ganz gutes Verständnis für das Bedürfnis erreichen können. Schaut man sich das jetzt aber zusammen an, aus Sicht der Parallelität, oder dass eben der digitale Ablauf, der datenseitige Ablauf und der physische Ablauf über die Phasen zwischen den verschiedenen Beteiligten, oder die aus einer Produktsicht, aus der Erstellungssicht, aus der Planungsrealisierung, wir sprechen dort vom Projektinformationsmodell oder Richtung der Betriebssicht mit dem Asset oder dem Organisationsinformationsmodell beteiligt sind und dort ihre Daten versuchen aufzubauen und zu pflegen, dann gibt es eigentlich einen ganz großen zentralen Punkt, der fehlt. Und zwar eine Basis, auf der wir eine End-to-End-Integration führen können, um diese verschiedenen Phasen oder Technologie oder rollenspezifischen Sichten zusammenzubringen. Und warum ist das wichtig? Gerne nochmal die nächste Folie. Warum ist es wichtig, dieses zusammenzubringen? Ich glaube, wenn man das jetzt so, und wir haben hier mit Bauen Digital, Building Smart eben dieses Instrument des Stufenplans, was man gerne hier unter dem Link nochmal auch vertieft anschauen kann, entwickelt jetzt über die Zeit, hat sich jetzt gezeigt, ja, wir sind so auf dieser Stufe 2 einer modellbasierten Kollaboration ganz gut zu Hause, haben darüber aber auch viele Anforderungen mit reingebracht, die auf dieser Stufe nicht lösbar sind. Und eine wirklich durchgängige, automatisierbare, prozessdurchgängige Kollaboration, die auch wiederum die Basis ist für die digital-physische Vernetzung, oder wo uns Daniel nachher noch viele Beispiele auch zeigen wird, die werden wir auf einer Stufe 2 mit unserem heutigen Mindset, mit den heutigen technologischen Möglichkeiten nicht lösen können. Und wenn wir gerne nochmal auf die nächste Folie gehen, und wir sind zu dem Punkt gekommen, dass wir gesagt haben, es ist nicht nur so, dass wir es nicht lösen können, auf der Stufe 2 jetzt wirklich in eine digitale Prozessdurchgängigkeit zu kommen, sondern eigentlich sind wir noch nicht mal in der Lage, die richtigen Fragen zu formulieren. Wer kann das eigentlich lösen und über welche technologischen Mittel stehen uns überhaupt zur Verfügung, das zu lösen? Und um diesen gemeinsamen Weg zu beschreiten, müssen die verschiedenen Beteiligten aus den verschiedenen Bereichen, einerseits rollenspezifisch, und gern nochmal die nächste Folie, rollenspezifisch, aber eben auch aus Sicht der Industrie und Sicht der Akademie, idealerweise würden diese eben dort zusammenlösen, oder? Um für alle dabei die Fragen, die wir stellen müssen, zu formulieren, einen gemeinsamen Lösungsweg abzubilden, darüber dann unsere Handlungsfähigkeit auch sicherzustellen. Wie kommen wir in ein digital durchgängiges Umfeld und das quasi auch zu verbinden mit State-of-the-Art Research, einem Talentpool, der uns dort unterstützen kann, um am Ende eine klare Zieldefinition zu haben. Was ist jetzt eigentlich unsere Roadmap? Wie kommen wir gemeinsam mit für diese Industrie auf einen Level 3 und können das entsprechend dort nutzen? Gut, ganz herzlichen Dank und gebe weiter an Daniel, der uns das Ganze nochmal vertieft darstellen wird. Vielen Dank.
Danke alle, hallo zusammen. Vielen Dank, dass Sie hier sind. Ich werde jetzt auf Englisch sprechen, but later, if you have questions, you are free to ask in German or English, and we will be fine with both. So welcome from my side. I'm excited we have so many people here. And as we began this conversation about setting up such a hub, some of the motivation came because I've had many good conversations in my 3 years here at the ETH with many interested industry partners. And it felt like it was time to formalize a lot of these conversations into a small group of industry leaders that really want to push forward towards this level 3 of BIM, as Alar presented. So this was a lot of the motivation. A little bit of my own, I have a short presentation and some examples to explain more of what we are seeing or what we mean by this. And as we talk about moving the construction industry forward, I often share this slide courtesy of the Research Center on Digital Fabrication in Architecture. It's the question of, is the construction industry industrialized? And you see here on the left, the ETH Cupola 100 years ago, and then the Prime Tower 10 years ago. And for the most part, our construction processes have not really changed. We have not seen a major industrialization of the construction industry. And there is also a lot of reports and examples showing that in fact, construction is one of the last industries to digitalize. So here is a chart that I have shared many times in my lectures, or maybe with some of you before. It shows on this y-axis here the digitalization index according to McKinsey. So how digitalized is an industry, and here on the x-axis, it's how much is that industry growing? Is the productivity of the industry increasing? And then you can imagine that things like information and communications technologies is becoming very digital and growing very quickly. But then you start to move down this line and you start to see other industries like manufacturing, mining, retail. You get all the way down here to hunting and fishing. And then we find construction all the way at the very bottom. So it's a question of, are we, is there room for improvement? And I think the answer is yes. And one of the missions that we have is to do that. And furthermore, we would say that digitalization is not necessarily industrialization. If we move towards this industry 4.0, digitalization is the first step on the journey, but it does not mean that by digitalizing and making our information in a model form, it doesn't mean that we've moved towards industry 4.0. It's the first step, but we have not achieved it. And what we present today and what our motivation with this hub is to move, I guess, just to give it 2 words, I would say beyond BIM. I don't want to make it sound like BIM is a negative thing. It's an essential step for us, but we want to think about what is the future beyond BIM and have this vision for construction industry 4.0. And here you have some of the key terms that I see, like, more advanced IT tools. We talk about prefabrication and product platforms. We also talk about supply chain, cyber physical systems, and also market focus and new ways of engaging with customers in the markets through things like platforms. So this is kind of an overview of what we think about when we go beyond BIM. And what we specifically have brainstormed at this point, and where we think that the CHDBE plays a very key role, is in these 3 topics. So I'm going to quickly present just some very short example works in each of these topics, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. The first one is about knowledge representation and ontology engineering. Then we'll talk a little bit about semantic web and decentralized systems such as blockchain. And third, we'll talk about cyber physical systems, platformization, and the common data environment. We see these as 3 key pillars that make up this move beyond BIM and towards construction industry 4.0. So I'm going to take about 10 minutes to show these three examples. I'll do the first two. David will actually give the third example, and then we'll conclude with some example slide, with a few slides about how we envision the new hub to be set up. And then we look forward to your questions and answers. So the first one is really about knowledge representation and ontology engineering. I just give a simple example. When we start thinking about the use of prefabrication, we start talking about the use of kit of parts. And there's an ability to take a kit of parts and create customized buildings. But in order to do that, we really need a knowledge representation of all the information that will be configured, and a way to understand that knowledge. So we think about configuration knowledge as the knowledge that people have on configurable products. And it's based on the knowledge needed when configurable products are defined and those problems are solved. So this is just a short example of some of the types of work that we've been working on, taking the building structure and the composition and deriving an ontology that helps describe the relationships between all of these different knowledge components. This is an example here, but for a PC, you know, of describing all the components and parts of a PC using an ontology. And one thing we've done is we tried to do this for a modular building, or you could imagine for any kind of modular setup. So you can define the building, but then also the module, and you can represent the product structure, and then talk about functional requirements or structural requirements. Now, the key point here is that in doing so, we're able to represent the information in a machine readable format, and it enables us to go towards more greater levels of integration beyond what we can see with BIM today. This is just an example of how this methodology works. And I want to say that I'm just using an example of what an ontology does, but we are also actively looking at other ways of deriving ontologies. We have an ongoing work right now about an ontology for circular economy and the built environment. But it's a way of formalizing our knowledge representation. And then we finally think that this ontology can be connected through BIM tools, through some already ready research and implementation, so that we can avoid reconstructing what's called like taxonomies, and that we can try to create an automated way of passing information and integrating project data. And we see this as the next level beyond manual implementation of data, but to create an automated way of sharing and passing data between different parts, components of the building. So that's example number one. We see that this knowledge representation and ontology engineering is as a key part of this level three. The next one is an example of incentivizing high quality data sets and using technologies such as blockchain and creating incentive systems to do so. So we think about a high quality data set. I think for many of you that work in the BIM world, you recognize that there's one thing to say, we have a BIM plan, we have a BIM execution plan. It's a very different thing to get all of the different companies and parties and participants to bring that information and put it into the BIM model. So at the very end, when you hand over this asset model to an owner for the management of the life cycle of the facility, that it's a high quality data set. And we measured high quality as being complete data. So all the relevant information is stored, correct data, that all the submitted data is correct and useful, and structured data. So it's organized and can be easily retrieved. This goes back a little bit to the ontology side, but these are the three parts that we think is quite helpful. And this is just one example of some ongoing work we've been doing, where we use blockchain as a tool to ensure we could collect high quality data in the process. So this was a collaboration with Building Smart Switzerland and a master thesis at the Chair of Innovative and Industrial Construction. We built a simple house prototype with 4 elements here. You can see the pump, door, wall, and floor, and a very simple model. And we focused on the process of phases prior to handover. So the tender and also the construction and handover of the asset. And so in a collaboration with an expert working group over 1 year, we tried to conduct a thought experiment. So how could we use a blockchain process and incentive system for the tender process, design, bid, build of a simple house prototype? Then we implemented using an Ethereum smart contract prototype and evaluated the benefits, challenges, and kind of near-term future work with construction professionals. In the end, this was an example of the flow diagram of what came up with the tendering process of each step. I don't have time to go through all of it. In fact, if you want a more deep dive, we have a couple of videos on our YouTube channel that talk about this more. And then we were able to implement these using smart contracts at each step of the project, so that we could simulate or that we could make the transactions when a step was complete. Then we could have a smart contract that would produce a token or a payout for those steps. And as we move forward, we're thinking a lot about how can we use blockchain for the construction process. I've had some conversations with some of you in the audience about creating blockchain for a tendering system, so that we can verify digital tenders that are structured and accepted. We find that these smart contracts help with completeness and structure. We also find that there is a need to create kind of crypto economic incentive systems. In other words, we need ways that we can incentivize people to put the right data on into the BIM model, and we can do that very easily using blockchain, giving even non-financial rewards, but like a reputation incentive. This is just a short example of the prototype. I want to also make clear that we prototyped it, and that blockchain we see that it can work now. So it's not so much the hype that's been going on for a while, but we're actually seeing implementation and use cases. So now we have questions around applying this for integrated project delivery, applying this for other forms of contracts in construction. And we really would like if there are some kind of people that are interested in such a decentralized system approach to do this. The other part is the semantic web technologies, which I didn't get into, but this is also a very promising research field that I think will be applied in the very near future in construction. Now I want to turn it over back to David, who is going to share a third one on the cyber physical systems and platformization that he's created.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I would like to start with this picture here on the left, which shows the so-called Industry 4.0 maturity levels. I think Industry 4.0, in German Industry 4.0, I think a lot heard that before. I mean, simply said, it's a collective term for various technological advances such as big data, IoT, and AI. Well, what does this picture show? It shows a possible path formulated in a German industry paper, how various industries or companies can achieve this goal of Industry 4.0. And this path consists of several steps. So we start with the preparation by creating a framework within the company, structural conditions. Then we go over to how do we organize information, how do we organize data management, etc. And then the next step is to process the stored information and to network it in order to analyze existing data and also to develop new knowledge. Then as a next step, so-called cyber physical systems are developed, whereby a good example here in the construction industry is this digital twin. So in other words, a digital representation of reality. And finally, the last stage, or the highest level of Industry 4.0, are these intelligent self-controlling processes. The question is now, what's the current state of the construction industry? And what we observe is that there is a trend that although these framework conditions are partially fulfilled, that means within the company, we have the boundary conditions, we have the organization is set up. Point one is mostly skipped directly. So, for example, we see machine learning project for project success analysis. We see the digital twins for facility management. However, very few companies deal with a clean, consistent data preservation, data organization, and data management. And the question is now, how do we enable the construction industry to achieve this basic understanding and the consensus on data whereby the information is lossless? An emerging and already existing concept is here the so-called common data environment, or CDE. It's a concept of a collaborative platform that has become increasingly important in recent years, and especially as a collaboration tool. Good. Then, as an example, I would like to show you here a research project that we carried out with an SME during the last year. And the problem or the challenge of this SME was exactly these problems of having inconsistent data management, data silos formed over the years. That means in each phase of the project, a different tool was used. It was not possible to retrieve information from previous phases, and so on. And the theoretical as well as practical contribution was now a so-called customized CDE. Of course, we considered also solutions that are already on the market, but it was decided with the SME together that the technical tool should be adapted to the business processes and the business model, and not vice versa. So it's not like you start with a new tool and then you have to adapt your own processes to the new tool. And as a result, you see it here on this slide, we developed a prototype in which the entire data management is centrally controlled, and each stakeholder can access his data from any phase. And as a result, we call it, or the result was a so-called democratization of data, whereby the entire process can be supported at the end by one single tool. If you now remember this Industry 4.0 maturity levels, we observed that further steps can be taken along this path by means of a clean data management and preservation. And what's also important for us in the context of this hub, it's not only collaborative platforms such as the CDE, but it's a general topic of platforms and platformization of the industry as a whole. That means at the end we want to work out together with our participants how different platforms can be helpful for your challenges at the end, and what platformization means for the industry. Yeah, and with that, I'm handing over again to Daniel.
Yeah, so yeah, sorry, I got a little bit behind in the slides, but here we go. Okay, so we've just introduced 3 key topics to move beyond BIM. With these are the 3 kind of categories we've started thinking about as very key and important, and then we try to come up with 3 very short examples. But I want to be clear that these are some things we've done, and the reason that we're setting up the hub is because we actually see the need to work with industry and with the organizations to move forward together, and to make sure we're also answering kind of the relevant questions to move beyond BIM. Yeah, so the question that we were asking, here it is: how do we move this research and implementation forward? And that's where we've decided to launch this CHDBE, this Competence Hub for multi-party data integration in the built environment as a way to explore how we could do that together. So you see here are 3 topics again on the left. You know, these kind of make up the motivation for us to move forward. And then surrounding it, we see there's 3 key stakeholders or groups of stakeholders that need to come together. So we've already presented a little bit on the academic side, you know, providing the research tasks and the academic guidance. But we also see a key point from the organizational side, groups such as Building Smart Switzerland and Bauen Digital Schweiz, to create alignments with the international developments, the national standards, and also go for open innovation. And then the third key point is the industry side. And I know many of you here today are from the industry. So it's about understanding the demand and use cases and allowing us to work with you to implement and create feedback loops. Now, I should be clear, we don't see this as very, you know, immediate implementation. We see these projects as the 2 to 3, or maybe at the most 5 years away. So I want to be very clear about that. But we do see these as key points that must be looked at by the Swiss industry in order for us to move forward and tackle some of these challenges and get to that level 3. This next slide here is just about what we hope to gain from being a part of this from the academic side. We hope to work within the hub because we look for very interesting research questions. I say myself, I don't have a laboratory. The construction site is my laboratory. So looking for people looking to implement and try out some of this latest research, of course, in a way that's not risky for your projects, but in a way that can provide valuable input for us. The side from the organization is to the input and suggestions for the development of the Stufenplan, as Alar said, and to create a nice linkage with industry and research. And for industry, we hope it's a way that you can access the latest research innovations and gain momentum moving forward. These are some more topics that we just didn't have time to talk about too much, but it broadens out a little bit of what we talk about. You know, for example, we didn't say very much about Cloud BIM, but that kind of is an emerging topic. The topic of configurators I touched on a little bit. And we're also open for other topics to explore, to move forward. This is just our preliminary view of how we would want to get started, but we also look to hear from you about what are the key challenges to take on. The way that we see this work is we've proposed these 3 pillars to start with, and we think that the end is somewhere over here, that we need to move towards an actual solution. We don't imagine it's going to be a straightforward journey. No one can predict the future, but we imagine something like a wandering pathway with different streams, with a lot of feedback and from all of the different partners, until we can slowly move towards a solution. Maybe we plan the solution here, but that solution changes over time till we end up here. And this will involve, you know, the initiation of the hub, but also contributions towards steering and reforming the hub as we need. So what we really want to create is a center or a hub that enables us to disseminate knowledge and to have a collective purpose working together. That's really the motivation here. All right, now I just have 2 more slides and we'll have a Q&A. So what do we need from you? Why are you here today? This is our initial kickoff event. This is a little bit of a market test, as Alar has said. We want to know if people are interested. I've heard a lot of people interested, so we thought we would put together a formal proposal for how we would do it, and we would put this out to the community. And we would like to see who is interested and would like to move this forward. So what we ask for partners is we want for knowledge and technology support. We ask for active participation in and steering of the research questions, of the research directions, and participation in workshops. And as part of that, we also ask for a membership fee, which helps us fund some of the scientific research and provide some supportive tasks and organization and communication back to the members. Our goal right now, I would say, is to find 5 to 6 members that want to found this center moving forward. And if we receive that, then we will be willing to, we think we'll be ready to go forward with the center and see how it grows. And then what do you receive, or how do you engage in the process? Of course, you're going to receive some very interesting insights and some connections. We think the network is really important for how we all connect together. And we also will have a way of setting up voting rights where we will propose some future projects, and we would like members to vote on which projects are most interesting so that we pursue projects in the interest of all in the community. And then we will hold quarterly knowledge exchange workshops. These will be most likely half-day events where we can exchange knowledge about current state of the art and create a network of, I would say, a small network of kind of forward-thinking individuals that are, and companies that want to push the industry forward. All right, last slide is just some next steps if you are interested. We have here a link, and David will put it also into the chat. If you are very interested, if you have more, we expect you probably have many more questions, and you would like to discuss with us, we have 2 dates coming up where you can sign up, and we'll have a short meeting, and we'll feel free to answer all of your questions. Also, if those times did not work for you, just feel free to send me an email, and we can find another time to discuss. We've planned the kickoff workshop, so the first initiation of the center for April, the end of April, as a chance to begin the event. And then in September, we're hoping then to have our second workshop. And my goal, I think some of you know Martin Fisher at SciFi. My goal is to see if he could give us a talk on how academic and industry partnerships can work successfully together, from an example from his time at Stanford, and how he might see that translating into the Swiss industry. So those are some of our next steps that are planned. Very happy to now receive any of your questions. I will try to unmute the participants, but thank you very much for your attention. We have now 20 minutes for a Q&A.